So we were talking about drugs mostly before we took this little detour into vitamin D, which is frankly absolutely fascinating to me. There's this drug called Paxlovid, which the current administration has invested very heavily, and I understand to the tune of something like $5 billion. I'm trying to fathom that, actually. But I've got this tweet from Vinay Prasad from a few days ago, and he says, I keep asking, has anyone seen trial data for Paxlovid in people who have already been vaccinated? And sort of the subtweet here is simply that the Biden administration is on the hook to pay Pfizer nearly $5 billion for pills it's already ordered, meaning that as much as half of a scaled-back pandemic funding bill the Senate is debating is already spoken for. I don't know the outcome of that bill. Well, I guess we'll know by the time we air the episode.
So if you don't mind, I want to talk about this, but I want to broaden it a little bit. So they took a drug, when I started doing, I told you earlier about the vitamins, and somebody came to me and he said, hey, you should do the industry. I said, I already do. I said, I'm making products for Major League Baseball teams, NBA teams, and some US ski teams. I said, I do this in my sleep. It's not hard. And I think I have a lot of fun doing the biochemical side of things. And he said, yeah, but you need to get in the marketing, and you need to, if you sell something, you should put it in a box. You can sell it for double the price. And I said, but it's the same product. It doesn't. I tell you, that's why I don't. I said, that's why I don't do it, because that would make me feel bad. And I said, maybe I shouldn't feel bad, but I would. And I said, at the same time, I wouldn't feel that bad if I was doing something good for people. And so I bring this up because at the beginning of the pandemic, when remdesivir first came out, I'll bring it around to Paxlovid, but this is important. People ask me, why am I speaking out? And I said, well, I'm speaking out because I have to. There is treatment, and people do not have to die. We can save almost everyone. At 90% we can save. Some people don't come in that early. And so once you get into later stages, it's hard to bring somebody around. But if you get everybody early, we literally can save almost everybody early. And I said, and if remdesivir was amazing and it cost people $3,000, I would say, well, I'm sorry, I can't. You're going to have to pay the $3,000. I'm not going to go fighting for everything I have, for everything I own, every part of my body, my family, everybody can be totally destroyed by me speaking out. And I said, I'm not going to take the world on, the industry on, let's put it, not the world, because a lot of people were with me. But when I saw the fact that these people were going to die, and remdesivir was going to hasten their death because the virus doesn't replicate past day 5, and they're giving this drug at day 15 and 20, I just felt like I've got to speak out. I have to speak out. Like I literally told my wife, I said, I have to do this. I literally can't sit here and watch people die. It's wrong. And I go, if something happens to me for doing the right thing, this is so wrong, I have to do it. And this is where I want to come around to Paxlovid, because Paxlovid is a fairly toxic product. This drug is a protease inhibitor. These things have been developed since the 80s. Basically, they've been used frequently in HIV drugs. They basically chop the virus up into small parts so that it can be reassembled into something nice. So basically, you can think of it as like a sheet, and they chop it up, and now you built a gingerbread house. And you need this main protease to do that. And in fact, for everybody here, the best protease inhibitor on the planet Earth happens to be ivermectin, but that's another story. But these protease inhibitors have been very successfully marketed in the HIV market. We have them. They never tested one in this pandemic in the early phase. They tested them in the late phase. And so do you think a drug that's going to affect viral replication would work in the late phase when the virus is no longer replicating? People don't die from the virus. They die from the viral particles in day 7, 8, 9, 10, and 20. They don't die from the cars. They die from the car parts. The virus isn't killing anybody. The virus is creating a pathway to inflammation. And the pathway to inflammation depends a little bit on the amount of virus, but the virus is no longer surviving when the inflammation is occurring. The inflammatory pathway is set off on like a domino effect, and the main dominoes don't fall until you hit about day 8, 9, or 10.
We live in an era of censorship and disinformation, and it can be really hard to know what's true and what's false in this information climate. To get honest information and insights you can trust, Join us on Epoch TV. You can sign up for your 14-day free trial at ept.ms/free trial Jan. That's ept.ms/free trial JAN.
So why would they not test any other protease inhibitor? We have plenty of them on the market until, day 15, day 20. They didn't. They never tested them. So these drugs, which we already have available, were never tried. None of us tried them because we had better ones, safer ones, less toxic, less chemically destructive drugs like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and steroids. All right? So we didn't use them on purpose because we had better. The repurposed drugs that we chose were much safer. We could have used Kaletra. In all likelihood, it would have worked, but it's kind of toxic. So we didn't want to use it. And if you want to look at the toxicity of these, anybody can look it up online. Toxicity of protease inhibitors, the list will be this long. There are 32 classes of drugs that it interacts poorly with. 32 classes. Not 32 drugs, 32 classes of drugs, right? So anybody who gets on Paxlovid needs to be off everything else. The problem you have is that you only need it for about 5 days or so it can be useful. So I'll tell you, Paxlovid kills viruses. It kills mitochondria, which are important to us. Viruses don't have mitochondria. It kills cancer cells. That's kind of cool. It also kills our normal cells. If you have a cell replicating, it's for the most part killing it. Same thing with remdesivir and molnupiravir. They have slightly different mechanisms. One's affecting molnupiravir and remdesivir is affecting the RDRP, which is like the copy machine, and they make mutations in the copies, which might make a mutation that's more aggressive. 99.999% of mutations are going to end up in the garbage, but 0.0001 is going to be a basically super virus, potentially. That's what they did with molnupiravir and remdesivir, and Paxlovid, this protease inhibitor. So they took this, put it in a nice box. Basically, they took almost the exact same drug as Kaletra, dressed it up, they put a box around it, and they're selling it for what, $5 billion? It's absurd. This is why we have the corruption that is now very apparent to me. These drugs are already there. So anybody here, these are not new. None of these drugs that they invented are unique.
You're just talking here about remdesivir, about
almost
that's
all
the one
the
that we
drugs.
Hear about the most, right?
Almost all the drugs that the pharmaceutical company, if you look at 10 drugs, the last 10 drugs that have come out and been approved, 8 of them have nothing unique about them at all. They do this over and over and over again. I mean, it's probably more like 1 out of 20 that actually may be a little unique, maybe even less than that. They're almost always like, oh, we're going to take this drug and go from two times a day to 1 time a day. We're going to take this drug, we'll change the esterification right here, it doesn't matter, and we'll use it for the same exact disease. We'll say the other drug is black box, like a drug like droperidol, which used to be great for nausea and for a little sedation after surgery. As soon as they came up with better drugs, they decided to get that in the black box category. There's so much little corruption in the past when there was little things like that. It's too big to try to tackle. But seeing people dying was too much for many of us, and that's why a lot of us have spoken up. I've never spoken up about vaccines. I've never spoken up about a lot of these little things that I saw. But if you're going to start killing people with your policies and killing people in a massive way, I had to speak up. That's what the impetus of the whole thing was. Not to be right. I wish I can go away. I'm doing very well, so I don't need anybody's help financially. I was doing quite well. So.
And just to be clear.